December 24th, 1971. A commercial flight over the Peruvian Amazon descends into chaos. A crack of lightning ignites the storm, and within moments, the plane is ripped apart mid-air. At 10,000 feet, passengers and debris are sent tumbling into the abyss. Among them is 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke, strapped to her seat, spiraling through the void toward what seemed like inevitable death. But when she opens her eyes, she's on the jungle floor, broken but alive. Surrounded by the merciless Amazon, she faces venomous predators, relentless hunger, and a fight for survival that seems impossible. This is the story of the girl who fell from the sky and refused to let her fate decide her end. Juliane Koepcke was no stranger to the jungle. Born on October 10, 1954, in Lima, Peru, she was the daughter of German zoologists Hans Wilhelm and Maria Koepcke. Her parents' groundbreaking research on the Amazon's ecosystems shaped Juliane's early life and instilled a deep respect for nature. In 1968, the Koepcke family left the bustling city of Lima and relocated to the remote Amazon basin to establish the Panguana Biological Station, a research hub for studying wildlife. There, Juliane became immersed in the rhythms of jungle life. She learned how to identify edible plants, navigate waterways, and recognize dangerous animals, skills that would later prove invaluable. By 1971, Juliane had returned to Lima to finish high school. On December 23rd, she celebrated her graduation with friends and teachers, an event her parents insisted she attend. The following day, she and her mother, Maria, boarded Lancer Flight 508 to return to Pucallpa, eager to reunite with her father for Christmas. Lancer Flight 508 took off from Lima's Jorge Chavez International Airport on December 24, 1971. It was an ordinary day for passengers eager to reach their holiday destinations. Juliane and her mother were seated in row 19, enjoying their in-flight meal as the plane cruised at 21,000 feet. But as the aircraft approached the Andes, ominous dark clouds loomed ahead. The plane entered a severe thunderstorm, plunging into darkness and turbulence. Lightning crackled outside, illuminating the chaos within the cabin. Luggage tumbled from overhead compartments, and passengers gripped their armrests in terror. Juliane recalled her mother murmuring words of concern as the storm intensified. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light engulfed the plane. A lightning strike. The strike ignited an explosion that tore through the fuselage, splitting the aircraft apart mid-air. Strapped to her seat, Juliane was violently ejected. She plummeted approximately 10,000 feet into the dense Amazon rainforest, spinning through the air as the earth rushed towards her. Miraculously, the thick jungle vegetation, combined with the helicopter-like spinning of her seat, slowed her descent enough to spare her life. She blacked out before hitting the forest floor, only to awaken hours later, disoriented and injured, surrounded by the deafening sounds of the rainforest. When Juliane regained consciousness, she was met with a cacophony of sounds, the calls of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant hum of insects. It was a stark contrast to the stillness that followed the crash. She was alive, but barely. Her injuries were extensive. Juliane had a broken collarbone, a gash on her calf, a swollen right eye from a severe concussion, and countless cuts and bruises. Her clothes were in tatters, one shoe was missing, and she had no survival gear or supplies. Yet, her will to survive ignited something remarkable within her. Juliane assessed her situation. Strapped to her seat, she had landed in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Despite her injuries, she knew she couldn't remain in one spot. The humid jungle environment was a breeding ground for infections, and predators like jaguars, snakes, and insects posed constant threats. Drawing from her childhood experience living in the jungle, Juliane remembered her father's advice: follow water. Small streams led to larger ones, which eventually led to human settlements. With determination, she crawled until she found a trickling stream, then began her journey downstream. Juliane's only sustenance was a bag of candy she found near the crash site. Carefully rationing the sweets, she ate 1 or 2 pieces each day. For hydration, she drank from the stream, aware of its dangers but knowing she had no choice. Hunger gnawed at her constantly. At one point, she saw frogs she thought might be edible, but remembered her father's warning to avoid brightly colored animals, as they were often poisonous, a lesson that saved her life. The rainforest was both a blessing and a curse. Its dense vegetation had cushioned her fall, but now it obscured her from potential rescue planes. She often heard the distant buzz of helicopters overhead, but was powerless to signal them. Juliane faced other challenges too. Without her glasses, her vision was blurry, making navigation treacherous. She used one remaining shoe to probe the ground ahead, wary of venomous snakes camouflaged in the foliage. Her injuries worsened over time. A gash on her arm became infested with maggots, causing intense pain. Still, Juliane pressed forward, determined to survive. On the fourth day, Juliane stumbled upon a grim scene. A row of seats with 3 passengers still strapped in, their bodies partially buried in the soft forest floor. She recognized one as a woman and feared it might be her mother. Her heart raced as she used a stick to examine the body, noting the painted toenails, something her mother never did, giving her a fleeting sense of relief, though sadness quickly followed. By the 9th day of her ordeal, Juliane's situation had grown dire. She was dangerously weak, her injuries were worsening, and her supply of candy had long since run out. Yet she clung to the lifeline her father had taught her. Follow the water. The stream she had been trailing widened into a river, which offered her some relief from the oppressive jungle. Traveling by water meant fewer obstacles, but it was far from safe. Juliane encountered crocodiles sunbathing on the banks and stingrays lurking beneath the surface. She stayed calm, trusting her knowledge that these animals rarely attacked humans unless provoked. She floated when her body was too weak to walk, her skin blistering under the relentless sun. Her back was soon covered in painful burns, but the water remained her only hope. On the 10th day, through her haze of exhaustion and pain, Juliane spotted something unusual on the riverbank. A boat. For a moment she thought she was hallucinating, but when she reached out to touch it, the boat was real. Near it stood a small hut, though no one appeared to be nearby. Inside the hut, Juliane found a canister of gasoline. She recognized it as an opportunity. She remembered how her father had once treated their dog's maggot-infested wound with kerosene. Summoning her courage, Juliane poured gasoline over her own wound. The pain was excruciating, but it worked. The maggots began to wiggle out of her arm. That night, she stayed in the hut, hoping its owners would return. The next morning, Juliane awoke to the sound of voices. 3 Peruvian woodcutters had arrived at the hut and were startled to find her there. Weak and disheveled, Juliane managed to explain her ordeal in Spanish. Initially hesitant, the men eventually realized she was the sole survivor of the plane crash they'd heard about on the news. Moved by her story, the men decided to help. They cared for her wounds, gave her food, and allowed her to rest. The following morning, they placed her in their boat and traveled 7 hours downstream to a larger settlement. Here, Juliane was airlifted to a hospital where she was finally reunited with her father. The moment they saw each other, words failed them. They simply embraced, their emotions too overwhelming for speech. Juliane's incredible survival was only the beginning of her journey. As she lay in the hospital recovering, the enormity of her experience began to sink in. Doctors were astonished by her condition, considering the immense trauma she had endured. Her injuries, though serious, were treatable. A broken collarbone, a deep gash on her leg, second-degree burns, and countless insect bites. Her resilience amazed the medical team, but the emotional scars were another matter entirely. Her father, devastated by the loss of his wife, struggled to comprehend how his daughter had survived when so many others had perished. Together, they helped authorities locate the wreckage of Lancer Flight 508, enabling the recovery of the remaining victims. Among them was Juliane's mother, who, heartbreakingly, had survived the initial crash, but succumbed to her injuries shortly after. Experts analyzing Juliane's survival pointed to several factors that played a role in her miraculous escape. The helicopter effect. The row of seats to which Juliane was strapped rotated as it fell, creating air resistance that slowed the descent. The jungle canopy. The thick layers of trees and vines helped cushion the impact, distributing the force of her landing. The seat's design. The seat itself absorbed much of the shock. Her survival instincts. Raised in the Amazon, Juliane's knowledge of the environment allowed her to find water, recognize potential dangers, and remain calm in dire circumstances. But above all, it was sheer luck. Juliane herself has acknowledged that, stating, "I survived because of a mix of knowledge, instinct, and fate." After her rescue, Juliane became the focus of intense media attention. While some stories celebrated her survival, others sensationalized her ordeal. False rumors circulated, including claims that she had built a raft to escape the jungle or abandoned fellow survivors, none of which were true. Haunted by survivor's guilt, Juliane grappled with a question that lingered in her mind. Why me? She often wondered why she was the sole survivor among 92 passengers. Her dreams were plagued by the sound of roaring engines and the cries of passengers. Despite the trauma, Juliane displayed remarkable strength. Determined to honor her parents' legacy, she moved to Germany where she pursued a degree in biology, specializing in zoology like her father. Juliane Koepcke, now known as Dr. Juliane Diller, continued her parents' work at the Panguana Research Station. Under her guidance, the station expanded its focus to include conservation efforts. She played a pivotal role in protecting the surrounding rainforest from deforestation, ensuring its unique biodiversity could thrive. Her book, When I Fell from the Sky, recounts her survival and has inspired countless readers. Through her work, she transformed a personal tragedy into a lifelong mission to protect the environment that once saved her. Juliane Koepcke's story is more than a tale of survival. It's a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Against unimaginable odds, she endured and overcame one of the most harrowing experiences imaginable. Her courage and resilience remind us that even in the face of the darkest circumstances, hope can prevail. As Juliane once said, "I was lucky, but I also believe we all have a strength within us to face whatever life throws our way. But not all are as lucky as Juliane." If you're interested in more stories of survival, remember to subscribe and we'll see you next time.